Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're tackling something literally every Agile team wrestles with, and that is team velocity. If you've ever stared blankly at a sprint report, just totally wondering what the data is actually trying to tell you, you are in the right place. Let's figure this whole thing out together.
So here's the million-dollar question, right? How much can your team realistically commit to the next sprint? It sounds like such a simple question, but man, getting it wrong is painful. It leads to missed deadlines, completely overloaded teams, and super frustrated stakeholders. Let's see how we can use actual data to answer this without all the guesswork.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. What is team velocity?
At its core, velocity is just the amount of work a team finishes in a single sprint. But listen, this is absolutely crucial. It is a planning instrument, it's not a productivity score. This is where so many teams go off the rails. They use it as a grade to judge performance, or even worse, they try to compare velocity between different teams. The second you use velocity to judge people, estimates instantly inflate and the number becomes completely meaningless. It's really just a planning anchor to predict your team's future capacity based on what they've actually done in the past.
Now to track this, velocity is always measured in one estimation unit, and Jira natively supports 3 main units right out of the box. First up, we've got story points, which is that classic relative measure of effort that most Scrum teams love to use. Second is issue count, or work item count, which is fantastic if your tasks are usually around the same size. And third is the original time estimate, for teams that prefer to just estimate their work in hours. Whichever unit your board uses, you gotta keep it consistent. Switching units midstream totally breaks your data trends.
Moving right along to Section 2, Jira's native velocity chart.
If you've never used this, finding it is wonderfully simple. You just pop open your Scrum board, make sure sprints are enabled, obviously, go over to Reports, click More Reports, and select Velocity Chart. That's it. It's right there at your fingertips. When you open it up, the chart gives you this really clean visual. For every sprint, you get 2 bars side by side. You have your commitment, what was planned at the start of the sprint, stacked right up against what was actually completed by the end. Plus, there's a horizontal average line running across. It's just a beautifully quick way to read whether your ambitious forecasts are actually matching up with reality.
What's really fascinating is how the trend reveals itself over time. Just look at this mock 7 sprint log. Focus on sprint 3 for a second. The team committed to 40 units of work, but they only finished 30. If a manager only looked at that one super optimistic sprint, they might demand 40 again next time, but the rolling data tells a totally different story. Looking at the history prevents us from setting the team up to fail based on one crazy week.
So how exactly does Jira calculate this baseline? The standard calculation takes the completed work from your most recent sprints and divides it by the number of sprints. So average velocity equals completed sprint 1 plus completed sprint 2 all the way through sprint 7, divided by 7. Now, why 7 sprints? Because it's kind of the perfect sweet spot. It's recent enough to reflect how the team is working right now, but long enough to smooth out the noise from, say, a random holiday week or a one-off system outage. Taking the 7-sprint average gives you a really honest, solid planning anchor.
Section 3. The missing sprint metrics. Because honestly, looking only at that one velocity metric, not a great idea.
See, there is a massive contrast between what velocity shows and what it hides. Native velocity shows you the final output. It says, hey, the team underdelivered. But it completely hides the context. It doesn't tell you that items just sat there for 3 days in code review waiting on an approver. It completely misses the massive scope creep that hit you on day 4. Native velocity tells you what happened, sure, but it is entirely silent on why it happened.
To get that why, the source material points us to 4 missing pillars. These are crucial metrics that the native Jira chart just completely leaves out. First, completion rate. What percentage of the commitment actually crossed the finish line? Second, scope change. What got unexpectedly added or ripped out mid-sprint? Third is workload by assignee. Now, true individual velocity isn't a thing, but you absolutely have to know who started the sprint completely overloaded so you can balance capacity. And fourth, status time and flagged item context. Like how long did tickets just sit there doing absolutely nothing?
These 4 pillars, they make up a complete, holistic view of your sprint. Think of it like a giant puzzle, and each slice holds the answer to why a sprint went off track. If your team missed their commitment, was it just bad estimations? Or was it because a stakeholder shoved 11 unexpected story points into the sprint on a Thursday afternoon? You literally can't fix a bottleneck if you can't see it.
Which brings us to Section 4. Get the full picture. Let's look at how to pull all this together.
This is where the source material introduces a real game changer, the Sprint Performance Report by the Time and Status app, developed by SaaSjet.
It takes that basic velocity number and wires it directly into the actual on-the-ground workflow data of your team.
When you compare the features, the Time and Status app doesn't take away the native data. You still get your trusty average velocity matching native Jira perfectly. But look at these additions. Scope change? Yes. Workload by assignee? You bet. Status time drill down? Absolutely. It keeps the planning baseline you're used to, but natively weaves in all that vital contextual data that Jira leaves out. Instead of jumping between a dozen different screens trying to play detective, the whole story is just sitting right there.
And here is the absolute key takeaway. This combination turns velocity from a simple lagging score into a massive conversation starter for your retrospectives. When velocity drops, you don't just shrug and say, well, I guess we need to work harder. No way. You pull up the sprint performance report, you notice tickets spend an average of 3 days jammed up in review, and you say, aha, we have a review bottleneck. Let's fix our process. You finally stop guessing and you start fixing.
So, if you are tired of running retrospectives where honestly nobody actually knows why the sprint failed, the source material highly recommends heading over to the Atlassian Marketplace to try out the Time and Status app by SassJet. It's an incredible upgrade for any Scrum Master or project manager who wants to seriously elevate their sprint planning.
I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on today. Are you ready to stop guessing and finally uncover the true story behind your team's velocity? Seriously, don't let your data hide in the dark. Embrace the full context, empower your team, and just watch your sprint predictability completely soar. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy planning.